know how come my screen just changed.
The screen.
My screen is completely changed.
Well, you look good though.
They look the same.
We can see you.
Mhm.
Button do I do?
You probably can't see all of us, all right? All right, we'll let you try and figure that out, Mr. Sandhu. And while we get started here, so welcome council, welcome staff, welcome to any members of the public who are watching this meeting tonight. Our first committee of the whole of this council, a new format that we're going to work with. And hopefully it proves to serve us well, and we can go right through to the end of the term and make some good progress as a group. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territories of the Subasat, translated meaning people of the lake, our local First Nation, where we live, play, and work together happily as neighbors. And before we get going, I'd just like to acknowledge the recent passings of two valuable community members, Crystal Mayo and Kara Smith. I'm sure all of you on the screen know who they are, and the general public as well knows who they are. So just want to acknowledge that their families and offer on behalf of council our support. And I know that you all feel the same way, I'm pretty sure. So thank you for letting me acknowledge that. So I'd like to call to order this first committee of the whole meeting Tuesday, January 11th, 2022 at 5 p.m. or 5:01, sorry. And this meeting is being held and transmitted electronically via council chambers located at 39 South Shore Road in Lake Cowichan, BC. So with that, I'll call it to meeting to order and ask for any introduction of late items. Councillor McGonigal.
Perhaps as a notice of motion, if I may, I'd like to initiate contact with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, given the recent ungulate events on Highway 18, and reaffirm the need for some more measures for safety on some of those. So if we could have that as a notice of motion, please.
Thank you, Councillor McGonigal. Good one too. So we'll let you maybe give us a sentence or two when we get there too, just to make sure we're on the same page and staff is understanding. So that's great. Any other items? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for an approval of this agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Omaka, seconded by Councillor Austin. All those in favor? None opposed, none, the motion carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. We have no minutes from previous committee of the whole meeting, so we'll move along to business arising, and we have none. And then that goes right to delegations. And we have Graham Roberts from NMP regarding the audit service plan. Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah, that's actually the audit service plan is attached to the agenda under 9A. And Mr. Roberts is just coming on stream now.
Okay, so would it be beneficial for us to open that?
Sure. And follow it with Mr. Roberts.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay? Thumbs up, someone? Okay, good.
Good to see you again, Graham.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're all still working from our homes or wherever.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I'll
welcome
just-
to tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just jump right into it if you're ready for me.
I think we're all open and ready in our
Okay.
attachments.
So yeah, I'm not going to read it. I'll just sort of hit the highlights. So, part of the audit process is us just, talking about what the audit process is for town council. So I'm just going to jump into it. So sort of, let's follow what page numbers you guys have so I don't lose you guys. So sort of, I'll jump into page 4 actually of the attachment. Well, yeah, it's actually labeled page 1, but page 4 of the actual physical document. To sort of we do a risk-based audit. It's no change from prior years, and so things that are changed increases risk by default. So we put some new changes that have happened or potentially to happen. No real changes to the operations of the town during the year, so no real changes there. So just some accounting reporting stuff. So the things are listed down there. Financial state presentation. It's got really truly limited impact on the operations or the actual financial statements. These are all new reporting standards, and the big one is going to be asset retirement obligation, but that's not going to be for a few more years. So that was originally supposed to be effective this year, but it's been delayed for the subsequent year due to COVID. They delayed the application of these standards. So the standards will come into play for the asset retirement obligation of January 1st of 2023. And what that basically means is you're going to need to review all your assets and determine if there's a legal obligation to remedy something in the future. A good example would potentially be land that was given to the town as a grant, and there's a covenant on the property. If it's returned back to the crown, it must be restored to its original form. So if there's a building on it, you'd have to demolish the whole building. So you'd have to sort of set up a liability for those costs. But Skill has been working on that, I know, because we've had a few conversations with that. But I'm sure there's probably a lot of talk about that. New revenue section, again, that's been delayed too, but really it's just sort of creating more definitions about what is revenue, what's not. Talks about performance obligations. So again, no real impact for the current year, but just something to think about going forward. Financial instruments, just really no impact for the town. It gets more into sort of derivatives and hedging and stuff like that. It's more of a bigger issue for the provincial and federal governments. And of course, we got COVID impact. So we have our own internal processes that we need to look at, and who knows what that's going to be when we actually come in to do the audit. So we'll just leave that as a moving target, because who knows where things will be when we actually are scheduled to do our year-end work, which is March 28th. So the audit approach, so it's sort of the next page. Big thing here to understand is materiality. So materiality is we're reviewing every transaction above the material amount, and we're sampling below that. We base materiality based on the scope and size of the organization. So down towards the bottom there, the number is $375,000 that we're preliminary thinking about for the 2021 year, and that's with the revenue, around the 7 million mark. That's how we determine materiality. So it's a function of revenue, but we'll confirm that as we get closer to the final year numbers, which I see Ms. Gill has attached preliminary numbers already in this agenda. So I don't anticipate the number to change significantly from that. So next page just sort of gives a timeline. So we sent out this audit service plan in October, but we're reviewing it with you now. There's a year-end date when we're scheduled to do their year-end work, and then sort of plan to have everything back to you guys in May for reporting purposes. Part of the team, so Corey Van Horst is the partner. I'm the senior manager on the file, and Gavin Reed, he's the audit senior. He actually worked on the file last year, so we have continuity on the file, which is always good for us and for the town, I think, as well. Fees, so these fees were part of a proposal which we did a couple of years, so that's what they are, just a slight increase. So Appendix A, I kind of talked about that a bit already, so we'll skip through Appendix A. But what is the audit process? So this is what's page 8? So it's page 11 of it. It's just talking about our audit process. So what we do, we have to obviously obtain a understanding of the town and its controls. And then we need to examine the accuracy of those controls. So we do some control testing just to make sure our understanding is good, and assess the compliance with applicable laws and legislation. We actually spend most of the time examining on a test basis. So that's when we're actually doing our auditing, vouching work to support the amounts that are in the disclosed in the financial statements, and also what the accounting principles are, the application are appropriate. And also then looking at the estimates. So the first part, we're just really just gaining an understanding, and we're not doing deep dive into the actual controls, because on the next page, our process, again, we do it from a risk base. So we actually, when we're doing our audit, we don't apply any reliance on the internal controls of the town. And that's not because the controls are bad. It's because from our auditing perspective, we're more efficient if we just test something substantially, so after the fact, and we vouch to the original source documentations, we can actually be more efficient for the size of the town's operations than to do control testing and relying on controls. So I just want to make sure that we're not saying the town has poor controls and that's why we're doing no reliance on it. That's not the case at all. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Again, the other parts just sort of inherent limitations of the audit process. It talks about fraud. You know, we're not. This is not a fraud investigation. We're just relying on when we see something that we, unless we think otherwise, we accept the documentations at face value. And the last one is audit independence, just sort of confirming that to be independent audit report, we need to be independent of the town. Let's talk about that there. So very high level, really, you know, if you have any questions, we're here for that. If you have any questions about the audit process, I'll be happy to answer.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Graham? I mean, it doesn't seem a heck of a lot different than what we usually hear from you. And
yeah, it's no change, no major changes this year. So let's make things a little easier, and hopefully you can maybe do it in person.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So in the event that COVID protocols, at least from your end, might say we can't go to the location, is there other ways of doing that? Oh
yeah, there is other ways. We probably did a bunch of it last year. We can do lots of stuff electronically now, so we can ask for, okay, we want to see these invoices, and right. They can scan them to us, so we can do that. We've been doing this for 2 years now almost. So it's actually interesting. It's changed the landscape a little bit in the audit world, where we actually are doing audits 100% remotely, not because of COVID, just because it's easier for all concerned. Right. Yeah. The time you might spend traveling is saved by staying in the office. Yeah. Like some computer systems are pretty sophisticated where the actually invoice is actually electronically attached to the GL. And so you drill down, you can actually see the invoices. So it's a nice to have, but but obviously the town doesn't have that.
I don't think you'll be doing that here.
Yeah.
And if I may, I think the majority of the questions are going to come with the implementations of the asset retirement next year. Yeah. That's going to be a major question for, especially how it impacts finances moving forward at budget times for the new council. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't want to don't want to think too far ahead because we haven't even started this one yet. So think about the confusing this time of year. So you're thinking of last year, you're probably still developing your budget for this year. Numbers get all confusing at times. Yeah. Okay. If nobody else has any questions, I'll say thank you very much, Graham, and good luck with all your audits and
Oh, yeah.
trying to get them all done. And we look forward to the results.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so that's that. I guess that moves us down to correspondence. And the first item is from Rosalie Sorry. Originally it said housing grant, but I don't know if that was the intention of the letter. I hope you've all read the letter because it's actually about applying for another grant to possibly further ahead, further progress any items from the original poverty reduction strategy. I don't know, Mr. Fernandez, do you have any other comments there?
Yeah, no, I think you're right in your assessment. It should be a poverty reduction program that we're looking at.
Yeah. So basically, I think what Ms. Soria is looking for is, or staff is looking for, is a guidance whether to move forward or not at this time. Councilor McGonigal?
Well, I think there were a number of recommendations and tasks that were within that plan that we did accept. So moving forward by implementing perhaps some of those within the grant process, I think would be incumbent on us to move forward. Just to have that report sitting on someone's desk without having any ability to do anything on those tasks would be redundant. So I would support an application for the grant, and if need be, I would move that application be made on behalf of the town to UBCM in the amount stated in the correspondence.
Seconded by Councillor Austin, yes. And Councillor Sandy, you had a comment?
So us receiving the report that we did, like we haven't looked at it since we received it. Part of the grant process, will it be, have we implemented anything like after the initial first round of this? Is that part of the grant application?
So I might be able to clarify that Rosalie wants to call together the previous committee, and that would make sense for continuity, and try and suss out what actions might be part of the grant this time.
Okay.
Obviously, for $50,000, you're not going to be able to do it all, right?
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Thank
If
you.
that makes sense to you. And everybody's comfortable with the existing council members of Councillor Austin and myself moving on that one, or anybody else want to join up moving forward? Okay. So is that a motion, Councillor McGonigal? Yes. And seconded by Councillor Austin. And any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? None. The motion's carried. Thank you. Next item of correspondence, Ministry of Flynn Road. Planned moth eradication aerial spray treatment of Lake Cotw. And I read through that, and I'm assuming most of you did too. And I always all of a sudden realized it was right over top of the town of Lake Cotw. And so definitely something we need to be aware of. And Mr. Fernandez, public relations on that, I would suggest.
Yeah, and in fact, when they did it last year, there was a fair bit of outcry on that. So I think you're right. You need to be upfront and let people know exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
There are some people who are opposed to being sprayed.
Yeah, I'm expecting some sort of feedback. Councilor McGonigal.
And I think the correspondence should also reiterate that it's not within our purview that this is being done. This is a entity of the provincial government that is moving forward with this.
Yeah.
They're just giving us information. They're not asking for our acceptance or endorsement or permission. This is something that they will do regardless. And I know there are a number of people within the community who were very worried about some of the substances that are being used. And I can certainly hope that an early correspondence would mitigate the responses from the town to Flynnrod, where it should reside.
All right. Good points there. Anybody else on that? Councillor Gomaka, sorry.
Thank you. when I was reading it, because I think it was a few years ago when we had the first presentation at the high school.
Yep.
And then our CAO was talking about spraying last year. And they're talking that there's showing evidence of the population increasing, but I'd like to find out more about what the past 2 years of spraying has actually accomplished.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the last round of spraying was over the forested lands, was it not? Although I can't be certain. Councillor Austin? You're muted. Councillor Austin, you're muted.
My husband was in the back getting his dinner. Sorry, it was mostly over our area because I noticed the planes flying at like 5 o'clock in the morning back and forth. And I think they're doing different sections each time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, we could write a letter and ask if they can tell us if it has been a positive change or not.
Yeah,
Well, I don't, it might not hurt for direction to staff to just ask for a briefing on it.
Yeah.
For the future at some point,
Yeah.
thank you.
see what comes back. I mean, they might not have information that's shareable. We'll see. Okay, so we'll move along to reports now. From Finance Administration, we have the Director of Finance regarding the financial report for the period ending December 31st, 2021.
Thank you, Mayor Day. So the report is there. We have the surplus as showing is obviously will change due to outstanding accounts payable year-end adjustments. So there's many accruals and adjustments that have yet to be done. I just wanted to mention that Lakeview Park was very busy this year and they ended with a surplus balance. We were also very successful in getting a grant there for the summer students, so that helped. However, the operations of the education center were significantly impacted in 2020 as well. So they together, there's going to be a combined deficit. So staff, we've been budget discussions are underway. The annual budget, as you know, outlays a plan for the town to provide the necessary public services and capital projects, and comes up with a way to pay for those services. One thing that we need to keep in mind when we're doing the budget, I thought it might be interesting for everyone to know that the labor costs for the town of Lake Cowichan, including the fire department, total just over $2 million. As in other businesses, labor is a key component to the expenses. Another key component that we need to keep in mind for budget purposes is the assets the town owns. There's a $45 million investment in tangible capital assets. So these are all the assets the town owns: underground services, buildings, everything that we own. And those have been amortized to date. And I'm looking at 2020 numbers for these statements, as the 2021 haven't been finalized yet. But 13 million of that 45 million in assets have been amortized, leaving a net investment in the assets of $32 million on the statements. And as you know, depreciation is the use of the asset or the amount that it's devalued since it was purchased. And the replacement of those assets in the future, the repair and replacement and rehabilitation if necessary, it'll cost significantly more than the 13 million that we've amortized, because the amortization is happening at its historical costs. So if you look at a pipeline that was put in the ground 50 years ago for, nominal amounts of money, we know now that it's easy to spend over $1 million on a water line replacement. So it's just nice to keep in mind that that's where capital asset management planning, all these things are coming forward. And now they've added another component, which is the asset retirement obligations. So not only do they want you to think about the assets that you have and for future repair and replacement of them, they also want you to think about other assets which might be leased or that have asbestos. They're going to have additional costs over and above the amortization costs to remedy that situation. If it's asbestos, if the building needs to be taken down, there's additional costs because of the asbestos. But they want you to look at storage tanks and many other. So I'm just in the beginning stages of identifying those assets and what those costs can be. But fortunately, we have one more year because that's been pushed back. So we're required to come up with all of these things, and this is something that impacts the budget because we have to look at our current and future cash requirements and make sure that we have adequate taxation, that we have adequate reserves and surplus in the future, and now and in the future, to deliver all the services and the capital projects that the town has to provide for its residents.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was an awesome preamble to the actual budget numbers themselves. So thank you. That helped explain a lot of things right off the get-go about what's going to come up next year. So any questions on the actual numbers themselves or the preamble and report? Councillor Sandy, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question, is there a line on here on our COVID funds we have remaining?
Yes, it is not on here because it's in the surplus, but there is on the last year's financial statements. And once that number is updated for the expenditures in 2021, we'll have a number as to what we have left.
And does that get rolled over to 2022? What's remaining?
It's not a reserve and it's not a cash. So it had to be, the requirements were that it went into surplus last year, whatever wasn't spent. So it's not sitting on the balance sheet any longer. It's in the surplus. But we'll give you an amount of what is left in that surplus.
Okay, thank you. And one other question. On page 2 under expenditures, I was just looking by law enforcement and other. It was budgeted for 64,000, but the actual was 101,788. And I'm just curious, what is that specifically?
Yeah, I guess I should move that. That is the firefighting costs, and we've got the offsetting revenue under the revenues that more than makes up for those additional costs there. They're not budgeted because you don't know if there's going to be a wildfire, and even if there is, if Lake Cotw is going to be deployed. So
I think I've asked that before, and for some reason I thought it just came out differently this month or for that month to me, so I just had to ask. So okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilor McGonigal.
Thank you. And as we move into budget discussions, I'm sure everyone's gone to the mail and received their 2022 BC assessment. And we're aghast at some of the increases. But just to put everyone's mind at ease, just because your assessment goes up that much, that is not reiterated in a taxation increase of that much. For instance, in the Cotw Valley Regional District, as we're moving forward, 16.48% increase in Area F was an average. That's the lowest in the regional district. The highest in the regional district is the town of Lake Cowichan, with an average of 43.48% increase in assessment. So assessment does not equate to similar tax increases. I just wanted to put everyone's mind at ease that you're not going to see a 43% tax increase this year. And that seems to be a premise when the assessments come out. As soon as you see those large increases, you automatically assume that your taxes are going to double or triple and it's all resilient on the mill rate that is set. So just to be clear on that for anyone who might be watching.
Yes, and that's good information. And I've just steered people to the BC Assessment website where they actually have a great explanation of that as well. So use that when you're out in the public, because I've had to use it a couple of times and it makes people quieten down right away when they understand that. Yeah. Good one. All right, any other comments there? Okay, then let's move along to the building inspector's report for December 2021. Any comments from staff on that? No. Any
Mr.
comments from?
Pipeline.
Yeah. Well, the weather hasn't been conducive to a lot of building, has it? All right. Any councillors have a question or comment? All right, then let's move along to the Chief Administrative Officer regarding the election procedure modifications. Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, I guess as everybody is aware, this is election year. So communities have begun making changes to their election bylaw and sign bylaw and even the procedure bylaw. So I've outlined some of the things that we need to do. I think there's some changes that need to be made to the election bylaw because of some changes in legislation. So I think I've just outlined in the recommendations, you may have to amend section 6 and 7 of the bylaw. And if council's amenable, add a new section for mail ballot voting. And then also add the regulations which I've attached to this memo to the sign bylaw. So that's basically a recommendation from staff, but it's really up to you to make the changes that you think are suitable.
Anybody want to speak to that? Is it something? Go ahead, Councilor McGonigal.
I think those changes make sense, given that mail-in ballots are now part of the election process. They were incorporated in the by-election, and I think they will continue to be within the legislation. So if you need a motion, I would move that those changes brought forward by the CAO be put into the bylaw.
That'd be
All
two
right.
bylaws.
Two bylaws? Okay. We're going to go with Councillor Sandhu as a seconder on that. Anybody have any questions or comments more? Okay. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? None. The motion carries. Thank you. And next we move into the next section of Public Works, and we have sewer plant upgrade update. And is that going to be a verbal, Mr. Fernandez?
Yeah, it will be a verbal. There is a deadline for the next round of applications for the green infrastructure funding, which is January 26th. Yesterday, we had a meeting, the superintendent and myself met with WSP to go over just how we were going to make the application, and maybe I will let the superintendent speak to the subject.
Yeah, so I've had a number of conversations with the engineers, like Joe and I spoke with them yesterday. There's a number of different things to look at. We're hoping to get the grant for the completion of the whole upgrades. If that doesn't work, we're going to also see what phase would be the best for the town. If it would be headworks for the next pond or phosphorus removal. So right now they're working on a Class D cost estimate for the whole thing that would help us out for our grant application. So we should have that by the end of the week, and then we'll start moving forward with the grant application, and hopefully we're successful.
All right, there's the update there as far as we're at now. So anybody have any comments or questions they'd like to ask staff? Councillor Sandhu?
Just a question, in previous grant applications, do they ever give feedback to municipalities and whatnot as to why we didn't qualify?
We did get feedback way back in time when we first went for the second application for the upgrades.
Okay.
And the reasoning given at the time is they will not fund capacity because of population growth. So that was the reasoning given, but lately they have not given us the reasoning. They've only said, we've had too many applications. So well, I've sent a letter, an email today. We've been trying to get a verbal, response from these people, but there's nobody available to speak to. And so so I did send out an email today to both the ministry and the grant agency, hoping that they will provide those funds.
Yeah, just curious. I was wondering if there's a process to getting feedback, because each year we've applied and haven't received anything. So I was just wondering just the process. So thank you very much.
Any more questions? Okay, so then we can move along to C now, strategic planning. So with a strategic plan 2021-2022. So that is the plan, and the first 2 pages is our 2-page. It could be condensed into one if you print on both sides. So that's the one I've been going by. So I asked for this to be put on the agendas because I thought it was probably time, since how 2021 is over, that staff relook at this and present back with us a report on where things that didn't get done in 2021 are at, and make recommendations on where they can be placed in the 2022, or leave it, you at least put it before council, and so we can discuss if it even stays on, and if so, where it should go. So leaving that more up to us, but maybe get their recommendations first. Does that sound like a good enough plan, everybody? Okay, good. So, Mr. Fernandez, do you know how much time that would take? Is it something that could be ready for a regular council for discussion, or would we just be better timing to leave it to the next committee of the whole?
Next committee of the whole, yes.
Okay. Councilman McGonigal, sorry.
I think at that time, we could probably go through that 2-page document with staff's input and go line by line on the projects that we were hoping for 2021, and just get an update as to where they stand, whether they're quarter done or half done or not even in the works. I think that may be more beneficial than looking for a staff report. If we had a verbal, similar to when we made the strategic plan, I think with the input of our public works superintendent and the CAO, that'll be an update that we can all understand and move forward with. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, so and possibly a good conversation for a staff meeting, just to make, so that everybody's prepared for those conversations as well, because not everybody looks at this as some of us do. All right. Sounds like a good plan to me. And the new business now, we've done the audit service review. Any other questions popped into your heads as we got to this point? It's pretty dry until we actually get to the final report. And so we can move to B, Chief Administrative Officer regarding freedom of information. Mr. Fernandez?
Yes, I prepared a policy that if you had a chance to review, and most communities are now putting this on their website in terms of, just an outline of just what people need to look at if they're making application under the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act. So we've already done that. I've added that to our webpage, but this policy would just give substance to that.
All right. What kind of direction would you like, Mr. Fernandez?
Basically,
Motion?
we're looking at a motion to adopt this policy.
Moved by Councillor Sandhu, seconded by Councillor Vomaka. I got you this time. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And opposed, seeing none, the motion's carried. The next item, we have the Chief Administrative Officer regarding observations and comments, verbal. And Mr. Fernandez, could you just start the conversation about today's Emergency Program Management Committee meeting? And I'll fill in any gaps of anything.
Okay. I wasn't planning on it, but I will.
Well, you were there.
No, I'm there. So we had a meeting today of the Emergency Planning Committee at 10 o'clock this morning, and all of the appointed members on that committee got together. I think the meeting was about 40 minutes. We kind of did a round table, figured out where we were at and things to do for the next meeting. So I think the mayor carried most of the conversation, so maybe I'll let the mayor speak to it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fernandez. And then do you have anything after that?
I do, yes.
Okay,
You want me to
so
finish it
just,
up?
Well, we'll finish that while we're in this opportune moment. So Mr. Fernandez, Ms. Gill, Mr. Sandu, Doug Knott, the fire chief, Sergeant Watson, and the new BC ambulance supervisor, or not supervisor, what is position? Unit chief.
Unit
was
chief.
on the Zoom today. And basically today we just did a roundtable, and I asked everybody around the table what they thought to know their role was in the case of emergency, just to get a sense of where everybody was at in their way of thinking. And the top item that came up is communications. So one of the first action items that came from that meeting is going to be to update everybody's communication catalog, so to speak, if you want to call that. And and we're going to meet again on February 22nd at 10 a.m. as well, just to carry on the process. The bylaw, the Town of Lake Cowichan bylaw says meet every 6 months, but we decided that we should do it a little more often until we really get up and running. Thank you, Councillor Sandu.
Was community services, they were invited?
Not this time, but they are definitely going to be on the next invite.
Okay. So is the CVRD, anyone from like area I or area F, are they involved in this?
Not at this point, because, well, we're operating sort of by the bylaw of Town of Lake Cowichan, but we do want to bring in April Diver from CBRD,
Yes.
and that's a good thought to keep on our table here. That when it comes time that we would like to have those two folks involved, but we're trying to get our ducks in a row first, and because they have emergency planning stuff going on, and conversations all the time at CBRD. So we'll get caught up, and we actually, if we can, we want to get April to come out and do some table exercises. So that'd be a great opportunity for everybody to come in and be a part of the planning.
Can I follow up?
Please do.
So having said that, when we've talked in the past about emergency preparedness here, and the CVRD was very clear to us that we could be on our own for 72 hours if our highway went out or whatnot. So what I keep saying on emergency preparedness for our community is, are we prepared in an isolated situation to be able to look after our community for 72 hours? And I mean equipment, I mean whatever equipment is needed under specific emergencies, radios, communicating outside our area. So just things like that. Like I think that's important to be part of this discussion, is that we are independently prepared.
Yeah, good point.
We say that to our community. We say that to our residents. You have to be set. Are you prepared 72 hours? Well, as a community, municipality, are we prepared? And not to be scrambling if something does happen, but we actually have something in place. So to me, that is, for me, a real high priority under the circumstances of this year, of last year, with our weather and, just kind of what's going on is. So it's just food for thought. Thank you.
No, and it's definitely included in the thinking too. We did actually have, that was part of the roundtable too. Would you have enough equipment to look after certain things, and how quickly could we get stuff here if we didn't? So those conversations were all in play today as well, but nothing decided to cement. So thank you for that reminder. That's 72-hour part of things. I know it's important, Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah, the other thing we talked about is reliance on contractors for their equipment, being able to access those pieces of equipment if the need arises.
And we did haul out the official radio today, and it's plugged in and charging as we speak. So that's a good thing too. Next, we need to get some training on how to use it. Apparently they came by once and trained, but and that was another important topic. No matter what we do or what roads we go down, we want to be, to make sure we refresh ourselves more than once every 1 or 2 years. So we're current. Go ahead, Councillor Austin.
What kind of radio is it? What type of radio?
When we learn that, I'll let you know.
Okay.
It's been here for a while.
it's.
I know there's lots of different kinds. Gordon has several. And just to mention too, there are a few ham radio people in town that Gordon is one, and Michelle McConnell, I forgot her last name. Things like that, when things are down and if we have generators and that, they still are working. So, because we have the antennas on the roof. So that's something to maybe make note of those people.
Yeah.
And also people like, I know I shouldn't just mention specific people, but there are local people here like Mr. Eckert, who does have equipment and that, and if we have a list of those names of people that we could use if we needed them in an emergency for flooding or road washouts or things like that. So I'm sure Mr. Fernandez has those names all written.
Yeah, and the fire chief has access to those as well. But that's the kind of things we wanted to update and make sure there was not only a computer record of that, but also hard copies in the hands of the folks that will need them, and make sure it's updated properly. So when we get to the point where we're only meeting every 6 months to talk about stuff, if that ever happens, and that's the first thing we want to do, because communication, that's what Doug said, that's what Lita said, and that's what the BC Ambulance Jared said, that the most important thing is the communication. Without that, you've really got no plan.
He was pretty good, actually, I thought.
Yeah. So lots of experience on the South Island, and might even say he's overqualified for this position, but we'll be lucky to have him, and hopefully he sticks around. Okay, Mr. Fernandez, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, well, I've got 3 items, and I thought I'd just go over them briefly. The first item is snow clearing. It becomes a contentious issue every time there's a large snowfall. The issue became all the more acute over the Christmas holidays, when we had 2 snowfalls that exceeded 25 centimeters each night over a time span of 3 days. Nature has a way of wreaking havoc on us, but it's worse when the public takes it out on the town employees, and they have a perception that the job could have been done better. We had some mean phone calls and emails. What the residents need to know is that our employees have worked over the holidays and have been up sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, just so that our roads could be made accessible and people can get to where they want to go to. And there was certainly very little need to pile venom on our employees who have had to work under difficult working conditions, under challenging conditions, and they had to deal with water main breaks. They even had to go out and get the garbage. So, we did what we had to do, but it was not enough for some of the public. I'm sure the average resident would not have made the same sacrifices as our employees have made working in this inclement weather. That's one little bit. And the other one is council and the public may not be aware that Cotw is mobilizing its forces to begin construction on the municipal hall this week. So I don't know if anybody's seen that. They've been back and forth, and they should be getting started this week. And the other part is, if you all had a chance to review the financial report of the Director of Finance, wherein it stated that reserve funds and surplus funds have to be maintained. Simply stated, reliance on this to keep taxation unrealistically low is not good financial management. This is an election year, and council should be budgeting realistically and must avoid keeping taxation artificially low. So the other thing we need to look at is fossil taxes, and we have to tackle that in a big way. So that's my little rant.
He's trying to send us home with a frown on our face. Eh? No, that's the reality of it.
No, I think the public should be a little more understanding of what employees have to put up with, and they don't.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councilman McGonigal.
I think they don't realize the capacity that we have as well within Public Works when it's 3 employees to try to initiate that total amount of work in a short time frame. we're not the only small community that struggles under these conditions. Gold River was in a similar situation. Sayward, all small communities that try to stay within financial constraints deal with this year after year. If the answer is 40 more public employees, you could hear the uproar if that was to occur. So we're trying to work within the means that we do have, and 3 members of Public Works to do that work, I thought they did a great job.
I mean, we can go to the big cities too, and they were having trouble.
If you drove down Duncan, all their sidewalks were totally covered. North Cowichan, so it's a capacity issue in all municipalities.
And Island,
And the second dump, Victoria shut down transit because they couldn't keep up. So, yeah. So good job by all people in Public Works, Superintendent, for keeping it moving. Go ahead, Councillor Sandu.
Well, what I was just sharing on my Facebook page was just the snow removal policy. It's very clear. And again, I just want to say thank you to all our employees, everyone in all our departments. And I'm sorry that they've had to take these type of calls and whatnot, but you know, our little community, we have a heart, and I think we need to start calming down a bit and appreciating if we have to do a little snow shoveling at our driveway, even though we just say did it, it is just the way of the beast. And there is no time set for what time they go on my cul-de-sac or your street or whatnot. They go where they go. So I just want people to appreciate the hours that our staff is doing, and especially through the holidays. They took time from their families, and they're not legally obligated to come into work if they're called in. They do have the right to say no. So
No.
I want to thank all of them for that. So again, thank you guys.
Okay, Councillor Austin.
Yeah, I want to thank them all too. And I know that I've been here 37 years now, and I was here in 96 when it was pretty horrible. And all our neighbors around here where we are on Comiekan and that, we help each other, and we'll help dig out a little bit and go and check on a neighbor to see if they need it. And people get you're not supposed to, don't tell on me, but their quads out with their blades on them and things like that. But you know, and if you have to stay in for a couple of days, you have to stay in for a couple of days. I lived in Victoria in 69. We had snow from Boxing Day, and it lasted till February, I think, 1969, if any of you were alive then. and people, you know, Victoria was a mess for 2 months. And people just have to realize, I mean, this is the weather. If they were living in some other part, my granddaughter's in Sayward, 4 feet of snow. They were all helping each other out and sharing generators and doing all sorts of things. And small town, 300 people. So I don't know if they complained. I do know one of the counselors there, but I haven't talked to him yet. But we do thank you, and we do appreciate it. And I know they came by my house one morning at 7:30 in the morning. So the snow plow. So much appreciated.
All right. Thank you for sending out those comments, Councillor Womaka.
Yeah, mine is that after talking to people and when we see the Facebook comments, a lot of it is just misinformation where a lot of our residents don't know what our actual obligation is. So a lot of them think that the side roads on the main road should all be cleared for cars, but that's not our jurisdiction. That's the Department of Highways. And then when you see the recycling, that's not ours either. That's a contractor. So a lot of it is misinformation. And so with residents, I know that even when they come in to talk to me, and they're very polite about it, and once you start to say and realize, well, it's posted on the website, and then they go, well, I'm old, I don't have a computer. And then you start to have a conversation with them and say, well, this is the priority that we do snow removal. If it snows, we go back to, the main emergency vehicle access, etc. And once you do that, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. So a lot of it is just that you do see, I think it's just misinformation of not knowing whose specific role is what. And there'll always be people who don't have, computer access or not computer savvy. And I think, and then, you get some that are computer savvy who make the remarks on Facebook. And then you say, well, why don't you go to the town website where all of this is? So I think a lot of it is frustration, people who are overwhelmed with the snow, and it's not right to take it out on the staff. And I sure hope that, the CAO and office manager don't allow that to happen, because you guys did an excellent job as far as I'm concerned. And recycling, it can wait a month. It's clean. Put it back and wait, right? Yeah, snow. I just say to people, stay home. Well, I can't get out with a stroller. You don't belong outside in a stroller when it's snowing. Keep your children safe at home. If you're older, shouldn't be out trying to navigate in the snow. Stay home and let the public works crew do what they need to do, and then come out when it's safe. Bottom line,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But-
Thank you for those comments. And I would just like to say that I do know also, and this is directed to the public works, and you could pass it on, that it's not everybody. The majority of people were really okay with everything, and same with the recycling. If I'm going to use social media as a gauge, I see the same names pop up every time. So it's a small audience that has that snarly attitude. And I do feel sorry for staff that have to take those phone calls. But communication again is another key. And I think perhaps if we're going to look at this any other way, is there a way we can communicate better through the town website or the town Facebook page on can please everybody have patience? And, you don't have to tell them that employees are on holidays and what hours they work but just use that message to say that everybody's doing the best they can. And I think if we all do that, we can probably keep a few people quieter. Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah, just the one thing that really fazed us was a call that came through with profanities. I mean, it's really not professional, I think.
Go ahead, Councillor Sandy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, since Joe said that, I don't give there's no excuse for that type of behavior regardless. We're all snowed in, we're all struggling, blah, blah, blah. And there won't be a reason that somebody could give me when they're phoning and talking to our staff in that manner, so.
All right. Let's move on to D, and that's budget meetings. Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah, I think it's in council's, do you want to start the budget meetings, say, after next week? And we can have a series of committee of the whole special meetings to deal with that.
I do remember Council McGonigal saying one time that we would be best to do consecutively.
Yeah.
And not wait 2 weeks between each one. So, but I guess I'd have to ask, and maybe we can communicate offline. I don't know how would that work for some people that have to work. Obviously, if we're doing consecutively, staff does work in the daytime and whatever, but it'd be great if we could accommodate that schedule. But if not, then we'll have to do it in the evenings. So go ahead, Councillor Sandy.
If we have to, could we do one day, one evening, one at 5 o'clock and then one during the day? I can try and adjust my work schedule. I just have to have notice.
A week's notice, is that appropriate?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on that? And then go ahead, Councilor McGonigal.
But we could initiate on the off Tuesday, which is next Tuesday, to start the process, and then perhaps the Wednesday after that, whatever works. But I think we kept those Tuesdays outside of committee of the whole and budget or regular council for this purpose. It's important that we get it done and move forward with some serious discussion.
Yeah, we shouldn't be smiling about that, should we? Now it's going to be a tough thing, but that's okay. I know, Councilor McGonigal, you've seen tougher and chaired them, as a matter of fact, and so have I. So we'll get through it. we'll get through it as long as staff's easy on us. Councilor McGonigal, go ahead.
So could we start next Tuesday, Joe?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
fine. Start at
Mr.
5 o'clock.
Fernandez, I'm sorry.
No, no, that's fine.
So 5 o'clock next Tuesday for the initial budget discussion.
Yeah.
Good for everyone? Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Austin?
Could we do Tuesday and Thursday? Like Tuesday, miss one day, and then Thursday? Would that work?
Not consecutive,
Well, do you want it to be consecutive?
be easier.
Okay, okay, no problem.
Yeah, let's do Tuesday, Wednesday, and then let's agree on Thursday if we can.
Wednesday at night or daytime? I just have something till noon on Wednesday.
Or afternoon,
Okay,
if that works for everybody.
if that's okay, all right.
Wednesday afternoon at,
2 o'clock?
2 o'clock?
so Tuesday at 5, Wednesday at 2.
Tuesday.
Thursday to be decided on. CPA.
To be at TVA, okay. Does that work for everybody now? They can make it work? Okay, we might need a rest. Yeah. Okay. That settles that then. Then move us to number 10, notice of motion. Councilor McGonigal, would you care to add on to what you said earlier about that issue?
Just a little bit more if I could. We did initiate a discussion with Ministry of Transportation when they implemented some elk lights, but that doesn't seem to be enough. The elk are not adhering to those lights. They're not stopping. And I don't want to put any humor into it because it is a very serious incident. There have been 4 elk incidents this last week with a major snowfall. They're looking for an easy way to get around as well. So I think another correspondence or meeting with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure on further mitigating aspects to limit elk, deer, ungulate, and vehicle impacts is needed. We did utilize the RCMP in the last initiation, and I think that would be important to get updated numbers on the incidents and severity of those. So I just want to reinitiate some safety measures and see if we can move forward with some other options.
So can we take that as direction to staff then, if everybody agrees? Yes, it's time to revisit that for sure. Thank you for bringing that up. Go ahead.
And if it means a letter to the minister, just reiterating those facts with our signatory, I think that could be a start. And a follow-up from there may be coming from them or ourselves after that.
Okay, so staff will figure out the best course there and get the communication rolling. Thank you very much. Okay. Then we can go to number 11, question period. And this is where we'll pause for 3 minutes for people to call in a question or email in. Of course, you can email those questions in at any time. But this is your chance if you wish to ask your question live in a meeting by calling 250-749-6681 and then dialing extension 102. Once again, that phone number is 250-749-6681, extension 102. And for those who wish to email, the email address is general@lakecowichan.ca. We will pause for 3 minutes and see you back at approximately 6:06. Mr. Fernandez, any questions or comments?
No verbal or written communications.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope anybody out there watching can send us a question one day or call in. We'd love to answer good questions. So with that, number 12 is in camera. Mr. Fernandez, could you explain the reasons for going in camera tonight?
I can indeed. Section 92 of the community charter requires that before a meeting or part of a meeting is to be closed to the public, council must state by resolution why the meeting is being closed and the basis on which the meeting is to be closed. It falls under section 91C of the community charter, dealing with labor relations or other employee relations.
All right. Thank you very much. Could I have a motion to go on camera, please? Moved by Councillor Vamaka, second by Councillor Austin. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And I believe you've all received a separate invite. So.
Thank you. And good night.